Some non-conference basketball scheduling news over the weekend as Nebraska and Kansas State announced a renewal of their old Big 12, Big 8 rivalry. They'll start it back up again this coming season, which got us thinking, what are some other non-conference games that we would like to see played? Rick, where would you go with that?
Yeah, obviously there are some easy ones out there. Michigan State, Duke, Carolina, anybody. I've heard folks want Big Ten teams to go out west and play Gonzaga. But to me, you see so much of those big-time programs versus big-time programs already because of the challenge, because of the Gavitt games. I'd like an interstate and something maybe a little smaller. How about Dayton, Ohio State? Now, there's been conversation already between those programs about getting that going on an annual basis. Listen, this Dayton team, whether it was Archie Miller back in the day, whether it was Ryan Gregory, Anthony Grant, this is a team that is, as Mike DeCourcy would tell us, they're not a mid-major. People want to call them a mid-major. They are a major program because that's how they act. The only thing I think holding this back, the scheduling issues for both teams. Dayton needs to build up wins, obviously, to get the national attention. Then they need 1 or 2 marquee games. They don't need 5 or 6. And Ohio State has 20 conference games. They have the aforementioned challenge, sometimes the Gavitt games. The scheduling could be a major issue, but I would love to see Dayton, Ohio State, Mike, every single year.
Well, and what would be great in my mind, too, is if the state of Ohio did what the state of Indiana does with the Crossroads Classic. So they've got Indiana, Purdue, Notre Dame, and Butler playing every year in a basic round robin. What if Ohio did that with the Buckeyes, Dayton, Xavier, and Cincinnati? Again, the logistics are there, but man, that would be so great for a state that's so into basketball, especially college ball. But I think if I had to pick one, I love that every school has their own history. And the fact that the Big Ten has added 3 teams recently, I don't think those schools should forget their history. So that's why I love that Nebraska is adding K-State. I would want those 3 teams to continue to play teams they played historically. And I think every Terp I know loved beating Duke. And they hated losing to him, but it was in a way where it was in your blood, and it would be so cool to see Maryland and Duke play basketball once again, Dave.
Yeah, for that matter, Maryland and Georgetown as well. That's a heated rivalry. I would go with what I think is the obvious one, and it's Indiana, Kentucky. And this is not a revolutionary idea, obviously, guys. I mean, they played about 40 straight years. I think back to the most recent regular season matchup, the Christian Watford shot, which I think announced the return of Indiana basketball. I understand there have been some discussions. There were some published reports last summer saying that it was on the table about renewing it. The sticking point seems to be whether or not you play on campus, which Indiana wants, or at a neutral site, which Kentucky wants. They were upset at how some of their players got knocked into when there was a court storming after that Watford shot. I get it. I think the games ought to be played on campus. I think they ought to be played every year. I hear what Rick was saying on the scheduling issue. Indiana already has the Crossroads in addition to all those games you were talking about. But I think in basketball, you're rewarded for playing a more difficult schedule, unlike in football where we have not seen any evidence that the committee takes that into account. So I don't think it necessarily hurts you to play a game like that, and I know the fans would absolutely love it.